And CBC's Karina Roman has been watching all of the day's developments, and she joins us now from Ottawa. Karina, let's start with more on Mark Carney's messaging and how Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre launched his campaign.
Yes, so Mark Carney started making his speech, making his pitch to Canadians, saying that he wants to give back to Canada, and he described it as the country that's given him everything, talking about wanting to give more opportunity to the younger generation, and also making a tax cut announcement on the very first day, saying that a Liberal government would cut 1% from the lowest tax bracket in Canada if they're elected. He did talk about the issues facing Canada, including ones we are well aware of: housing, affordability, infrastructure. But he also talked about how in just 9 days, that's how long he was Prime Minister, how much was accomplished in terms of foreign trips and shoring up foreign alliances and military announcements, internal trade announcements, tax cuts. And he said he wants a strong mandate to finish that job. But he was also asked how he can convince Canadians that he and a new Liberal government would really be that new, would really be that different from what came before. This is what he had to say.
The first is that you've seen a change in approach and action. It's not words, but action. I think one of the things that I would emphasize is that I recognize, and my government recognizes, the need to act dramatically and act rapidly to build an economy that's strong for Canada, to control what we can control, to build for us and by us.
Now, it's a campaign, so of course he took the opportunity to also take shots at his main opponent, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, saying that Poilievre doesn't know how to fix things if he, it's easy to be negative if you have never fixed anything. It's easy to be negative if you've never built anything. Direct shots at Pierre Poilievre. But also, that meant, of course, that in Poilievre's speech today, he also took shots at Mark Carney, saying that the Liberals are just putting on a mask, that there really isn't change there, and that real change would actually come with the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre. Have a listen.
To the struggling single mother who worries how she will feed her kids, hope is on the way. To the 35-year-old still living in mom's basement but dreaming of owning his own place and starting a family, change is on the way. To the seniors choosing between eating and heating. And to all those who wonder what happened to the country that they knew and love, change and hope are both on the way.
But the reality is, this is not a change election. That's what people thought it was going to be a couple months ago, but things have vastly changed. Most people believe the ballot box question is all about Donald Trump and the U.S. president's tariffs and threats against Canada's sovereignty, and who would be best to stand up to Donald Trump. So Mark Carney saying that it's a betrayal, but that we're getting over the shock of that betrayal, but we have learned lessons. And he talked about what he would do to shore up Canada's defenses, both economically and from a security perspective. Pierre Poilievre saying that he is not like Trump, despite the accusations that he is, that he's very different, and also that when he was asked if he respects Donald Trump, he said that he respects the office of the president, but not necessarily the words and actions that are coming from the person in that office.
Karina, I was zeroing in on what leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, was saying, naming specific people: a single mom, a senior, a young man who can't afford to leave his parents' home. That tactic is something we often hear in NDP leader Jagmeet Singh's speeches as well, addressing a very specific Canadian person. Let's talk about the main message that Singh was trying to push in his first appearance since the election call.
Yeah, so Jagmeet Singh also talks about the regular person, the regular Canadian, and his message very much is, if you're one of those people, which pretty much everyone feels like a regular Canadian, that the NDP is the party for you. But his main message was, it's not, and this is something we've heard from the NDP many times before, it's not just between blue and red, between Conservative and Liberal, that the NDP is a real choice for people who want change, who want someone looking out for them, and that if you're driven by fear, let's say fear of one party or the other in those two sides, that shouldn't mean that you go to one out of fear, that you should choose the NDP out of hope, not fear. Have a listen to what he had to say.
But this is like being told you have to pick between a leaky house, a house with a leaky roof, or a cracked foundation. One patched together with empty Conservative slogans, the other rotting from the inside after years of Liberals protecting the most wealthy. Now, those houses are not the same, but neither will hold up when the storm hits, because neither was built for you. People will tell you in this election that it's about who can negotiate with Donald Trump. I'm here to tell you the real question is, who will make sure you and the things that you care about are not on the table?
Now, the NDP are struggling in the polls and definitely have an uphill battle in terms of getting their message out. But they say that they're used to being the underdog, they're used to being underestimated, and they're certainly ready for this fight.
Karina, thank you so much for that. That's CBC's Karina Roman in Ottawa. The Bloc Québécois launched its campaign in Montreal. Leader Yves-François Blanchet says his party will focus on helping families while continuing its commitment to issues such as climate change.
Just had a study released showing the enormous price. We're speaking thousands of dollars a year for each family, each household, to pay for the damages of climate change, which some people, both other leaders, seem to believe that do not exist, cost nothing.
Blanchet also urged voters to give the Bloc the balance of power in a potential minority government situation. He also said decisions for Quebecers need to be made by Quebecers and that the Bloc is best suited to advocate in Ottawa for the future of Quebec jobs, resources, and clean energy development. The Green Party of Canada has also kicked off its election campaign. Co-leader Jonathan Pedneau spoke earlier.
The role for the Green Party right now is to stand up for every single Canadian that's having a hard time because of politicians and career politicians standing up in front of them and constantly lying to them. We're not politicians. We're both people who have been to the front lines, have put our bodies on the line to fight for what we believe in. And at a time when values are diminished, at a time when politicians lie and equivocate, we tell it like it is.
Pedneau is the face of the Greens' national campaign, with Elizabeth May serving as the other co-leader. They spoke about their opposition to Mark Carney removing the consumer carbon tax and politicians not keeping their promises. May says they're the only party to stand up for climate action and policy.
The Liberals and Conservatives are now almost exactly tied in the polls, each with 37% of the vote. The New Democrats well behind at 11%, then the Bloc and Greens. But almost as important as the now is the trend. After years of Conservative dominance, in January, Justin Trudeau resigned. Trump became president, and the Liberals surged, gobbling up support from both the Conservatives and the NDP. A dramatic shift, and it may not be the last. That CBC Poll Tracker is an aggregator of trusted Canadian polls. One of them is from the Angus Reid Institute, and Shachi Kurl is the president of that organization. So Shachi, after that sudden shift that we saw with the Liberal surge, should we expect more volatility ahead?
I mean, a big part of this comes down to how solid and locked in is that vote, Ian. And I can tell you that where the Conservatives have started to really see some losses, they're losing voters. Among the voters that they still have and are hanging on to, those folks are solid voters for the Conservatives. They're not going anywhere else. At least about 3/4 of them aren't. And so that's key. That's really important. Conversely, though, for those newly converted Liberals, when you ask them, you know, how committed are you to this party that you're choosing or leaning towards? You know, only about half of them say they're fully locked in. So watch for this to keep moving in different directions, or to see those Liberals lock in and convert. And if that happens, my goodness, look out.
When we were on cross-country checkup earlier today and one went to Burnaby to speak to voters there, I heard about the economy being a key concern, from tariffs to affordability. Beyond that, are there any issues that you see coming up in the polls that could turn this election?
I think we've already seen the big election turn issue already baked into this campaign, and it's the Trump factor. It's sovereignty, it's annexation, it's tariffs, and that has reframed the ballot question. Remember, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives spent, you know, the better part of 2 years really taking it to the Liberals, reminding Canadians why they were so ticked off at Justin Trudeau and so ticked off at the governing party. All of a sudden, it's almost as though, in some ways, that's become retrospective. And Canadians, at least right now, on day one anyway, are focused on what's in front of them. And what's in front of them is who is best to deal with Trump. Now, you've already seen Pierre Poilievre also start to pivot. He revealed a new campaign slogan today, which, you know, incorporated the whole fight message, but also the change message. We'll see if that resonates, and frankly, if there's enough time in a really tight 5-week campaign. And when you factor in advance voting, Ian, it's even shorter than that. So he doesn't have a lot of time to change minds, but clearly we're going to see the attempt from the Conservatives, who were so quiet for the better part of 8 to 10 weeks, now starting to come out with a message that sort of meets Canadian anger and energy where they're at.
Big province here in British Columbia. You have 30 seconds to tell me how things are looking, because all of the major parties have had some level of success in BC in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is no deliverance for any political party unless they can deliver in BC. I mean, it comes down to that. About 2 months ago, we saw the Conservatives solidly ahead, including in the vote-rich suburbs around the city of Vancouver here, sitting at more than 50% of the vote were the Conservatives. Today, they're neck and neck in a dogfight with the Liberals, and the biggest loser in all of that has been the federal NDP, who are seeing their vote really just stampede over to the Liberals, and that's a concern for them.
All right, Shashi, always nice hearing your analysis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.